Hi everyone, this is Pete here. So today we're going to talk about the recent market crash and how should you navigate it. Alright, let's get straight into it. So yesterday the market had one of the fastest and fiercest sell-off. You can see over here the S&P 500 fell by close to 2.7%, Nasdaq almost at 4% drop, whereas the Dow Jones also fell by 2%. So why has the stock market been falling recently, right? In fact, if you look at the whole month, right, almost all the index has already fallen by more than 10%. And that is mostly because of the Trump threat of tariff, right? The 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. And he called it a little disturbance, right? I don't think this little disturbance is going to be that little, right? Overall, if he's going to go ahead with all this tariff, it's going to cause the price of goods to increase. And with that, I think it will cause a lot of inflation, right? And what happens after inflation is that the Federal Reserve will not be able to lower the interest rate, right? Because the Federal Reserve is trying to keep inflation under control with the high interest rate, okay? And guess what? When the interest rate remains high, and that will be bad for the stock market. You get the point, okay? So this fear has caused the stock market to panic, and people are basically doing what we call the sell first, think later policy, right? Even the institutions are doing that. Everyone is just selling regardless of what stock. In fact, across the board, I would say most of the stocks are dropping except for maybe some of the very conservative stuff like, non-discretionary consumers that is still okay. For example, like Pepsi, and some supermarkets. So that's the main thing, right? But today, I want to say I am going to call the bluff on Donald Trump, right? I actually don't think that he will implement the tariff full on, okay? You heard me. I think Donald Trump is bluffing over here. Now, let me share with you why, right? I don't think he is outright bluffing. I think he might actually implement the policies for maybe just a short while, but I think overall he's using it as a negotiating tool, right? Because he said that firstly, the tariff will come in on the February 4th. Initially, right? And then later on, he decided to delay it by a month. And then he said, I'm going to not implement the full tariff on certain things like energy, like fertilizer, the potash, right? So what's happening here, right? He's kind of like flip-flopping all the policies. And this is not new to the US. In fact, if you have been watching all the US policies, right? This kind of reminds me of in the past when they have the US government shutdown, okay? So it's also very scary. Sometimes they will even blow past the deadline and cause a real government shutdown, right? But most of the time, all these are actually just theatrics for show, okay? And even if they blow past the deadline to really cause a real government shutdown, you can see is that eventually the government will return to normal again, right, in just a matter of days, okay? So I think this is what is happening to Donald Trump right now. I think Trump is bargaining, right, with other countries to achieve some of the objectives, for example, border control, for example, drug control. So with the next tariff deadline coming on the 2nd of April, not April's Fool, not on the 1st of April, okay? It might really happen, maybe for a few weeks, maybe even a month, but I think overall this is going to only be temporary because that's what Donald Trump is good at, right? Brinksmanship. And in fact, Trump has said it himself, right? He's going to use the tariff to achieve some objective, and you can see over here, he don't meant it to be permanent. So what did I do? I decided to buy the dip, right? I'm looking at buying shares and even buying ETF, in incremental fashions, right? The thing is, start buying when it starts falling, right? And if it falls further, I'm going to buy even more. Why? Because I think overall in the US market, right, it is likely going to hit, to the top right-hand corner, hit higher after this, right? Because there's another rumor that Donald Trump is actually engineering a crash in the stock market, right, to reduce the interest rate, okay? And that's because right now, the current US debt interest is so high, it's crazily high. It is even higher than the US defense spending over here, you can see, right? And on top of that, there's another rumor that really scares me, and I don't want to be left behind the curve when this happened, right? And the rumor is that Donald Trump is also crashing this so that, right, the wealthy, including himself, right, can scoop up assets at a cheap. Now, frankly, there are so many rumors, I don't know which is true, but they all point towards one thing, is that you want to be a buyer at these times and not a seller, right? Think about it. If Donald Trump is trying to make the interest rate lower, asset recovery after this is going to be swift, okay? If Donald Trump is trying to help the wealthy to scoop up more assets, then asset prices trust me, I think it's going to shoot up right after they are done buying. So in fact, if you look at all this tariff when it is all said and done, I think asset prices will likely jump higher, not because the economy is doing well or anything, but with all these policy, what's going to happen is that the US dollar is likely going to be further devalued, okay? So this is going to be an asset price inflation, whereby you need to be invested before it happens, otherwise you will just be left chasing the prices later on. And another reason why I buy the dip is because when you look at historical data over here, right? In fact, history has shown after rate cuts, when the Fed pivots, the overall return on the stock market is actually positive, right? Over here, you can see 10 out of the 14 last rate cut cycle, right? We actually saw a higher market, right, after 1 year. Now, of course, in the near term, it's a bit harder to tell, right? But after 1 year, the majority of the time, we do come out much more positive. So you can see here, overall, it really pays off to stay invested in the market, even as the Fed pivots, because in the long run, the chart is always to the top right-hand corner. Now, overall, I don't think Donald Trump will be able to reduce the debt that much, right? Because there's so many things to fund under his campaign and all the initiative. Rather, I think he might just add more to the national debt. And if anything, we can just look at his past track record, right? You can see over here in his previous term as president, when he took over the US presidency, it was at a 20 trillion debt level. When he left the government, it was actually at 28 trillion. So he added another $8 trillion, even though in the last term, he did promise that he is going to reduce the debt level. All right, so some key points over here to remember is that overall the market goes up in the long run, so don't fight it. But at the same time, just remember in the short term, market can be very unpredictable. Just about 1 month ago, I think nobody were talking about having a market crash, and here is where we are right now. Okay, and my third point is that while Trump did say that he is not really looking at the stock market as he implements all these policies, I don't really listen to what the man say, but I want to look at what the man does. And in his previous administration, actually he often refers to the stock market as his crowning glory, as his, credit that, for example, over here, he says that the Dow Jones has hit 30,000, at a surprise news conference, right? But overall, let's not ignore the fact, right, that it is going to be painful. It is quite painful right now, even for me, to see that the stock market has dropped so much, right? In fact, my year-to-date returns for my personal portfolio has reduced from about 20+% just about 1% right now, okay? So broadly, I would say the paper profit for this year is already gone, but really that is part of the plan, right? We should not get too happy when prices shoot up, right, very quickly, and neither should we get too sad when prices drop very rapidly in the short term, because over here, I really focus on the longer term returns. And that is why right now with this crash, I am adding more to my positions. So rather than to be panicking, you should be treating the volatility right now as a friend, right? Take advantage of the short-term crashes to accumulate shares of great companies, and your future self will really thank you for it. All right, so that's all I wanted to share about the market crash. I have more videos coming up to talk about the market. All right, so do subscribe and stay tuned for future videos. And if you like the content here, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.